We're talking some MMA, though, right now on the program with the host of Ringside Report Radio, which can be heard here on TSN 690 Wednesday nights and Friday nights. You can go to ringsidereport.net for more, and you can follow our next guest on twitter.com/Dave Simon MMA. I forgot to tweet that out. It is Dave Simon.
Yes,
How you doing,
is.
Dave?
Good, man. Good.
What's cracking?
Nogueira's arm. As Werdum caught him in a nasty armbar last night.
All right,
got him to submit.
Set the stage here. We had UFC on Fuel TV 10 last night.
Yeah.
Where was the venue?
It was in Fortaleza, Brazil. Back in Brazil.
Nice pronunciation.
Thank you.
I don't know any better.
I get a lot of
but
practice.
good.
Yeah.
Okay.
So back in Brazil. Second time in 2 months that they're back in Brazil. Two Brazilians, Nogueira and Werdum, heavyweights that were coaching the Ultimate Fighter Brazil against each other. And they had a big fight yesterday in the main event. Scheduled for 5 rounds, finished 241 into the second with an armbar. Very nice belly down armbar from the black belt in jiu-jitsu. Both of these guys, great grapplers, great jiu-jitsu guys. I figured if it went to the ground, Werdum would have the advantage. And he did. Nogueira not able to keep it standing up, as I think he probably should have. And he suffered a loss for it. Nogueira, 37 years old. A lot of people wondering how long is he going to keep fighting for. Was this his last fight? I say probably not, but definitely a big win for Fabricio Werdum right now at heavyweight.
Game points here on TSN 690. Up until that incident or that armbar, Dave, who was carrying the fight?
Yeah, I mean, they only fought for about 7 minutes. It was pretty much back and forth. A lot of groundwork to start off the fight. Nogueira going for a submission, and then Werdum with a very nice sweep. It was a close fight. I'd say Nogueira had the edge standing up a little bit. He landed more strikes, but a lot of it was fought on the ground. Werdum getting a takedown real early in that first round, and that's where he wanted the fight to take place, on the ground, and he was able to finish Nogueira, who's very, very tough to finish. He's only been tapped out or knocked out in the UFC. A big, big win for Fabricio Werdum. The only other guys that have... actually, only one man has submitted Nogueira before. That was Frank Mir back in 2011, so Werdum becomes only the second man to submit Nogueira, and Nogueira's a very tough guy. He's a black belt in jiu-jitsu, but Werdum, he's a higher caliber black belt than Nogueira is.
All right, Dave, a lot of other octagon news here. Let's start with the bill that was passed. The House of Commons passed a bill legalizing contact sports like mixed martial arts. The legislation originated in the Senate. It's now gone through the House of Commons. What is the implication here for UFC?
Well, there have been problems in the past in Vancouver. The UFC has held an event in Vancouver before, but then the province didn't want MMA in there. And technically, for the criminal code in the federal government, prize fighting that wasn't boxing was technically illegal. So this kind of rectifies it across the country. It is legal, and now that, provincial governing bodies that may not allow mixed martial arts, they're going to be forced to a little bit. And if the provincial governing body doesn't want to allow it, then the UFC has federal jurisdiction so that they can bring in their own judging crew and referees that they do in certain places where there is no kind of governing body. And that's a good thing. It's a good thing for Canada. It means that the UFC, it means that mixed martial arts can take place anywhere now in the country, and we won't have to go through legal loopholes to do it.
Did Tom Wright and the UFC Canada's offices play a part in this at all?
Yeah,
do you think?
A huge part. This is something they've been working on for a long time, and they finally got it done. It was the UFC that really pushed the news out there. They put out a press release. They were tweeting about it on their official UFC Canada Twitter. This was a UFC Canada
initiative
mission, to really get it done across the board, and it's a huge success. And on the same day, the UFC getting the sport legalized in the state of Connecticut becomes the 49th state in the union to legalize mixed martial arts. The lone holdout now, still, the only state, the only place in North America, state or province, where you can't have mixed martial arts is the state of New York.
Interesting. Boy, wouldn't they love to be in Madison Square Garden for an event? That would be great.
Yeah.
All right. Elsewhere, a guy we talked about a couple of weeks ago here on this show, Dave, TJ Grant, the Canadian lightweight champion in the UFC. He's been confirmed to fight Benson Henderson in the main event at UFC 164, August 31st at the Harris Bradley Center in Milwaukee. Is this going to be something that people outside of Canada are also going to really look forward to? Is this worthy of a main event? Are you excited about this matchup?
Yeah, this is the World Lightweight Championship. These are the two best 155-pound fighters in the world. It's a huge event that they have set up for UFC 164 in Milwaukee. Josh Barnett's going to make his UFC return facing Frank Mir in the co-main event of that card. So they definitely stacked the deck on pay-per-view, and the main event is sick. I mean, TJ Grant has run through the lightweight division, knocking out Gray Maynard just recently, and he's definitely earned the title shot against Benson Henderson. I don't know if Benson is the most a popular champion in the UFC right now. He's definitely got a lot of fans, but he's not to the level of a George St. Pierre or John Jones. But he's definitely somebody people want to pay attention to. When the best fighter in the world in a weight class is fighting, MMA pays attention. This is a big fight. TJ Grant is a threat to Benson Henderson. I know a lot of people not really sure how big a threat he's going to be, but I think it's going to be a very, very tough fight for Benson. Maybe the toughest fight he has had in the UFC.
All right. Elsewhere, we know the UFC is going to be in Winnipeg for UFC 161. Shogun Rua drops off the card there. Is that unfortunate news? Did you want to see him fight?
Of course. Shogun, he's a former UFC champion. You wanted to see him fight on this card. He was supposed to fight Rogerio Nogueira, but Rogerio suffered an injury last week. I think we maybe talked about it briefly on Game Points, or maybe not. I think it was all baseball last week. But Rogerio suffers an injury last week. Chael Sonnen says, I will fight him on 10 days' notice. I will fight Shogun on 10 days' notice, and the word is Chael wasn't able to get a visa on 10 days' notice to come into Canada. He's had some problems in the United States legally. He had his mortgage license taken away, kind of a mortgage fraud type of deal he was involved in, so maybe having some legal problems in getting into the country, and he was not able to make it for UFC 161. Shogun and Chael will now fight on the main event of UFC on Fox Sports 1, which will take place August 17th in Boston. Yeah, it's a little bit confusing because the channel's called
sports channel,
Fox Sports 1, and the event is the first one, so it's kind of weird. But Chael versus Shogun has been moved to there, and it's very unfortunate for the Winnipeg fans who were expecting a triple main event. It's the second big fight to drop out of this card. It was supposed to be Hanan Barao defending the interim bantamweight title against Eddie Wineland. Hanan got hurt. He's out of this fight. Rashad Evans, Dan Henderson, still a good main event, but losing Shogun for the card definitely sucks. Roy Nelson, Stipe Miocic now the co-main event for the card on Saturday. It's fight week once again here, Saturday night in Winnipeg on pay-per-view.
What do you have coming up Wednesday?
We're going to break down everything that happened last night. Obviously, a lot of action last night. We'll talk about that. We'll start breaking down UFC in Winnipeg. There's a lot going on in MMA. It's fight week again, so back at it Wednesday night at 11.
Dave Simon MMA on Twitter.com and ringsidereport.net is the website. Don't forget, Wednesday night Stanley Cup Final begins, but Dave will be on after the Stanley Cup Finals.